Talk to a really interesting candidate now. Let's watch this first.
This is me at 16 years old in Israel on a high school trip holding an assault rifle, and this is the definition of indoctrination. I grew up in North Miami Beach. I grew up in a very insulated, very Jewish community. We were taught that Palestine and Palestinians, that's not a real thing, that was made up by Arabs. Everybody over there that wasn't Jewish was just Arabs. But the message was always clear that Jews were not safe and that the Arabs wanted to hurt us.
So that's Jen Pearlman. She's actually running for Congress. Not only that, she's running against one of the most hated establishment Democrats in the country, if not the most hated, Debbie Waserman Schultz in Florida. So this is going to be a hell of a race, and it's coming right up on Tuesday. So Jen, welcome back to TYT. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great. So Jen, let's start on the issue of Israel, and then we'll get to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all the different issues there. So when did you begin to realize, I saw the whole video that you did there, that was amazing. When did you begin to realize, hey, maybe I didn't get the full truth here as I was growing up?
It was in the early 2000s. It was right around the time of the second Intifada. And whatever was going on in the news at that time, where I started to just have like a different kind of thought about what was going on over there. And then it was also around that time that the anti-BDS legislation started popping up in states in this country. And so then I started to investigate, what's BDS? And I went down that rabbit hole. And it just sort of, it evolved over years where, it was pretty, I would say early on before, and I'd say even before 2010, that I realized we're not the good guys at all. But I even held that hope for TwoState Solution even until 20, when I ran the first time. And now I know that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so I don't know about that. I'm still for TwoState Solution. We could have that conversation, et cetera. But I'm fascinated by your transformation because I can relate to it. Because I grew up with Turkish propaganda. So I was, I believe that the Armenian genocide didn't happen. I believe that the Turks were the moral army, et cetera. I mean, but this is the stuff that we're taught because of, of the particular ethnicity we grow up in, et cetera. So I think it speaks really well of you that you got past that. So that's obviously one of the issues in this campaign, but let's stay on it for one more minute here. So what's Debbie Wasserman Schultz's position on that?
Well, I mean, she's pretty rabidly Zionist. And I do not know if it's ideological or if it's just that she's bought and paid. I mean, she's taken close to $1 million just from AIPAC. Which, who knows what other aspects of the Israel lobby she's taken money from. I mean, she still posts pictures of herself with Benjamin Netanyahu. She's doubled down, tripled down. She was one of the Congress people pushing that resolution that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which to me is just off the wall, just off the wall. And she, again, maybe it's ideological for her. To be honest, I really don't care. What I do know is that she does whatever AIPAC tells her to do.
Yeah, and so the idea, that bill was atrocious. Basically saying if you criticize Israel, you should be arrested in America. That's nuts, that's totally nuts. So, okay, I can't help it. So I believe in a two-state solution. These days, are you for one state? But Israel's never gonna allow that. So how do we get past that?
Oh, I know. Oh, it's not going to happen willingly, but not, South Africa wasn't that willing either. I mean, sometimes things have to happen unwillingly. To me, they are demonstrating that they are incapable of coexisting on the planet with the rest of us. They are not capable of that. And it's been a degradation over years. When I was there in '87, it wasn't as obvious. There weren't separate highways, there weren't walls yet. So it wasn't as obvious about the apartheid. But the reality is this was a failed experiment. And we need to sort of accept that it was a failed experiment And we need to go from there reasonably. And the problem is that once religion enters the mix, the reason goes out the window. But there will be no, first of all, Israel has said over and over and over that they will not allow a Palestinian state. So why do we over here somehow keep holding out hope for a two-state solution when Israel is completely not going to do that? And I just, at this point, I just believe them, and I agree there isn't going to be. And at the end of the day, I don't support the idea of a Jewish state at all. I don't support the idea of an ethno-state. I think that in order to have an ethno-state, one must commit an ethno-cleanse. And that is, again, something that is, unless somebody can show me historically where there's an ethno-state that didn't somehow conduct an ethno-cleanse. But, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And even if at this point, let's say Israel was willing to say, fine, we'll stop. Okay, now what? The whole West Bank is Swiss cheese. They've created a situation purposefully so that a two-state solution isn't possible. And I actually believe it was never intended. And if you go back and read, like if you've read Ilan Pappy's book or some of the other, new historians on this, there were discussions about this. Two-state solution was a Zionist talking point to justify land theft. They never had any intention of allowing that. And I'm just tired of ignoring what they're saying. I think we need to believe them.
Yeah, I think Ehud Omer meant it. I thought he did a real proposal and that could have worked back in 2008. And it's a little bit more complicated. And when you say they, you don't mean Jewish people, you're Jewish, right? You mean the government of Israel.
No. I am talking Israel.
Right.
Israel, Israelis, the government of Israel, and whatever other, evangelical Zionists or Zionists around the world in the diaspora that support this nonsense.
So the reason I brought that up, Jen, is because look, I'm not allowed to say it, but I think Israel is doing great harm to Jews across the world. I think that it's putting them in bigger danger. It's getting the whole world to hate the so-called Jewish state. And I'm just curious what your take on that is.
Absolutely. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it always was from its inception, just the whole idea of a Zionist state. It's like, we're persecuted, we're gonna create our own state. But in order to create your own state, you have to persecute another people. Like there was no way around it. But I do think that as more people are realizing it, that it's becoming, I'm actually glad that more people are seeing it, but there was never a way for this to work. It was never going to be a successful experiment when they were lying about the people that were there. We were told there was nobody there, by the way. We were told there was nobody there. Yeah. So when you build a state on that kind of premise, we weren't even lied to about this country like that. We were at least told there were people there. We completely disrespected them and enslaved them, tortured them, and eradicated them. But we never pretended they weren't here.
Yeah. So okay, let's go to other issues. So I imagine you have other disagreements with Debbie Waserman Schultz. So tell me about the biggest ones. What do you think? Because within the Democratic Party, corporate media tries to make it seem like, oh, well, we all agree. It's just you're being a rabble rouser for no reason, and you're being mean to Debbie Wasserman Schultz by daring to run against her. Also, we're for democracy. So tell me about the biggest differences.
Okay, so basically any difference wherein it would affect her decisions that she's bought and paid for by corporate special interests. So for example, I support single payer universal health care, period. Single payer universal health care. She's voted against it at least 3 times. I support ending drilling in the Gulf. I support fossil fuels and fracking. She's never met something. She invests in those industries. She not only takes contributions from them. Another huge one as to what's going on here right now, housing. We are having a major housing crisis, Florida in particular, all sorts of problems. She's taken close to $100,000 just this cycle from real estate developers, including Blackstone. So these are the companies that are buying up the housing, that are raising up our prices. Like, we're in a complete disaster down here with housing. It is people's #1 issue domestically in this area. And yet she's on the take from the companies that are screwing over our people. So, I mean, the biggest difference between her and me is that this is a lucrative career for her, and I see it as a term of service. This is not a career move for me. Never had an interest in this. I have no interest in staying there. Like, that's just not how I envision my life going. But I just feel like we need someone who isn't on the payroll for all of the industries that are crushing us.
Yeah. So, Jen, what's your website?
Gen2024.org.
Okay, so that's easy. And we'll have the link in the description box as well. So, but an interesting, ironic thing has happened, Jen, which is that your housing position is now closer to the Democratic standard bearer, Kamala Harris, than Debbie Wasserman Schultz's. So she,
No.
Well, I mean, today she unveiled a plan where it's got 4 prongs trying to keep housing prices down. You might not agree with some of the details of that, but at least she's trying. Whereas Debbie Wasserman Schultz is taking $100,000 from real estate interest and money from Blackstone and is supercharging the problems with housing and why the prices are going up.
Correct. I mean, I'm not usually in line with the Dems. I mean, in reality, I'm always going to be the left of them. I mean, that's just how it's always going to go. So I am like what I think is an old school Democrat. I support the idea of a 21st century economic bill of rights. I actually believe that we have a right to things like healthcare, housing, clean water, education. And I actually think that the party has fallen woefully short of the ideals that I had about them when I joined that party in, oh God, 89. And so, I'm actually trying to create a world where the Democratic Party is actually for labor and working people. And the only way we're going to do that is by having people in there that don't take the money from those interests. So until I see those people in the Democratic Party, I mean, I'll support a non-corporate conservative before I'll support a corporate liberal or corporate Democrat.
See, that's interesting.
Any day.
Yeah, because corporate PAC money is the cancer that's eating away at our government and our democracy. So, and what's interesting is like, so you could hate Matt Gaetz and Josh Hawley, et cetera. But what's an interesting phenomenon is that once they stop taking corporate PAC money, those two in particular, and they're among I'm not sure if they're the only two in the Republican Party. They're among the very few though in the Republican Party that
Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey.
So that's perfect because all 3 of them, all of a sudden, and not Massey because he's always been the same, but the other 2 all of a sudden started proposing anti-corruption bill after anti-corruption bill and started proposing bills to keep corporations in check. Funny how that works, right? And so I imagine that you're funded.
Exactly.
Yeah, that you're funded by grassroots donors, and so. Let me ask you too in that way. Look, you ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz before in the primary, right? And normally people that don't have a lot of name recognition, and she was a giant. I mean, she ran the DNC very infamously in 2016. You normally get in the single digits, but you got nearly 30%. So, do you think it's possible for progressives like yourself to actually win these races? And one day take over the Democratic Party?
Yes, but it's not going to happen the way that the people that I've been seeing play it have been playing it. And what I mean by that is we need to get away from the labels. I don't even, like when I'm talking to people, I don't even refer to myself as a progressive. I don't like the labels. I don't like all of the, the squad this, the labels that, because all that's doing is just fostering this tribalism when in reality, this is a class war. And I've been to enough labor rallies. I have been to enough labor protest marches where I know that you could be standing next to a Trump supporter on one side and a Bernie supporter on the other side, and we are all fighting for the same things. And so for me, at the end of the day, is the idea is to build coalition for working class people. And I know that a lot of people on the left don't like to hear this or acknowledge it, but there are a lot of working class people on the right. And the reason that that's happening is we're seeing this populist uprising right now. We're seeing it all over the world. This is global. And the Democrats have an opportunity to capitalize on that, align themselves more with labor, and really take advantage of that in terms of changing it against the populist right, which Trump has seized, taken great advantage of over the past however many years. And the Democrats are just coming off like they're elitist, and it's not working. So my goal is to somehow consolidate the working people for working people's issues and get away from the labels and the names and the nonsense, because it is toxic and it is completely unproductive. Like, I wish I could wave a magic wand and just there would be no parties. No parties, we don't need them. These two private clubs have hijacked our entire election process. So yeah, I'm just tired of the labels.
Yeah, look, this is a super interesting conversation, and Jen, it goes along with a lot of conversation we've been having at TYT with libertarians, right-wingers, left-wingers, et cetera, people across the political spectrum. And it seems like there's a new awakening of people realizing it's not, blacks versus whites, left versus right. It's the people in power versus the rest of us. And so yeah. I think we're at an interesting inflection point, and the people in power might be in more trouble than they realize. So I think your race is a super interesting one to watch for, coming up on Tuesday of next week. And so we're gonna keep an eye on it. And gen2024.org is the website. Jen Perelman running against one of the interesting characters of American politics, one of the most hated politicians in the country, Debbie Waserman Schultz. So Jen, thank you for joining us, and thank you for having the courage to take her on.
Yeah, you know what? It's really, it's easy to do it when you know you're on the right side of history, right? Like I don't have anything to lose from doing that. I know where I stand, right? And she's been sitting there a long time. I don't think she's as liked as people think she is here.
Yeah, well, I know across the country she's not very well liked by Republicans or a lot of Democrats. She's the one that's the principal architect of rigging the 2016 primary against Bernie Sanders, and not through the votes, but through the system and the process of when the debates were, funneling money to Hillary Clinton when through the states, et cetera. So super interesting race. Again, thank you for joining us, Jen. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.